What up? It's your boy, Dick Incredible Man, and yes, I am back at it again. And this is 911 Lone Star, Season 2, Episode 6. And I gotta say, this episode was really interesting. TK's having some jealousy issues, and we meet Paul's family. Let's get into it, man. Like I said, this episode was legit, man, because there was a lot of emotion in this episode, and it feels like the roles were very reversed this week with 911 and 911 Lone Star, with Lone Star being the more serious episode this week and 911 being a little comedic this week. And I'm not mad at that. It's nice to see the roles kind of reversed a little bit. And with everything that's going on with Captain Strand and the baby, TK starting to feel a little jealous, and not so much as, like, well, he's mad that his parents are having a baby. It's the fact that this baby's going to come in and TK feels maybe just a tad threatened slash a little envious, because it seems like his parents are going to be together while raising this new baby, and TK never had that, which we realize that's the issue behind this jealousy at the very end of the episode. But throughout the episode, we see him dealing with some issues and kind of being a little cold toward his dad because of what he's going through. And especially one moment that really stuck out about that whole situation is when Captain Strand asked TK to sign his power of attorney, and he was like, well, what made you decide to sign it? And he was like, well, I'm going to be a father. And TK's looking like, well, you're already a father, you're my father. And their relationship was a little strained a little bit this episode, but at the end of the episode, we see how TK decided to relieve himself of this stress of being bombarded with all of these emotions and feelings, and he decided to stop being a firefighter with his dad. He decided to take and be a paramedic. And I think that's a good route for TK while he's dealing with all of these emotions that he's having right now towards his father. And so he won't put anybody at risk or anything like that, so he can focus solely on being a paramedic and not having to kind of really bump heads with his father, like with everything that he's going through. So I think him being a paramedic is a good thing, but we see it kind of resolve itself at the end once he decides to go that paramedic route. Him and his father have like a nice conversation, and we see him at the doctor's office with his mother and father, and he's now excited to have his little brother. And I feel like the case this episode kind of helped with that transition a little bit, because we see that these two brothers are going through their own thing, and one is staying in Texas and the other one is leaving and going to Boston with their mother. And then boom, bam, they end up in a minefield, and the older brother gets hurt, and the little brother's there caring for him, and TK kind of sees that. And I feel like that kind of made a play into his whole decision and his thought process of everything that took place at the very ending of this episode. But along with all of the stuff that's going on with TK, which was nice and lovely, we meet Paul's family. We meet his mom and his sister, and I thought it was just going to be like a nice introduction to them, but we see that Paul's sister has some resentment towards Paul about something. As it goes on, we learned that Paul feels like it's about him transitioning into Paul, and we learn as the episode goes on that's not the case. His sister feels like she was abandoned by her sister when she transitioned into Paul, and she was never really there. Nobody really explained it to her, especially Paul. He never really explained it to her. So now we kind of see that Paul feels abandoned by his sister because she never really actually looks at him like her brother, and then his sister felt abandoned by Paul because she feels like he took her sister away. So there's a bunch of misconfusion going on with these two characters, and it got resolved once they kind of just both laid it out in the air, and they kind of were there for each other. But it took Paul's sister being in the hospital and him learning that she has MS for them to really click, because they laid it out on the table what was going on with both of them, but like there was no resolution. But once he found out his sister was in the hospital, they got to talking to each other, and they kind of both just kind of reconciled with a little bit, and they both kind of forgave each other for what they said and what they were going through. And it laid it out because Paul mentioned to his sister that, I was never that big sister that you wanted and adored and loved so much. I was never her. That's who you saw me as, but I was never her. And she realized that, and at the same time, Paul apologized for not taking it away, but not being there when she needed him, if you understand what I'm saying. It got a little confusing right around there, but they both reconciled and they apologized, and at the end of the episode, she called him her big brother, and she called him Paul. So it was a nice connection between these two characters. And I gotta say, that's pretty much what the episode was about. But now I want to talk about what we're dealing with that's over here lingering around, and that is the new paramedic. Multiple things of people that just ran through this episode that Captain Vega and Nancy had to go through this episode. And the dude that ran over Nancy's foot, oh my gosh. Dude, you almost took somebody's head off with this canister. You ran over Nancy's foot. You don't need to be a paramedic. Then the other chick, she is violent toward bystanders. She's headbutting people. Oh my gosh. It's just not cut out. The one dude, how are you a paramedic and you're fainting at the sight of blood? You're a paramedic. This is your job. You have one job, to save people, and you're going to come in contact with a lot of blood. You're telling me that you're fainting at the sight of blood? Then we have the one dude that looks perfect on paper. His stats are perfect and everything is perfect. And Nancy made a very valid statement when they interviewed this guy. Nobody's that perfect. There's something going on with this dude. And it ended up not being the case until it revealed later in the episode when we see that Captain Strand and TK has to save these two boys in this minefield. And the dude, no, I don't want to go into this minefield. Sure, I'm not going to sit here and say that, I would have been one to just ran up and jump into a minefield. But if there's a clear plan laid out and stuff, I kind of be okay with it because we need to save these two kids. So you're telling me you'd rather sit here, save your perfect record, and let these two kids die? Sure, it's a little extreme, if you will, because it's a minefield, but we can't just leave these kids out here to die. This one dude is injured. He's going to bleed out before the bomb squad even gets here. So we have to do something. And this dude was like, no, this is too dangerous. I don't want to do it. And then he was like, I don't want to mess up my record. And how I keep a perfect record is because I don't be running into a minefield. I get the danger behind it, but at the same time, you are a first responder. Helping people in danger is in your job description. And sure, it was still a little risky, the way that Captain Strand and TK done it. But at the end of the day, it worked out. And my thing is, you have to save these kids. You can't just leave these kids out here to die. And he just wasn't having none of it. And then he comes in there all big and mighty. He was like, well, Captain Vega, I don't think this is going to work out, And she laid it out bare for him. He's like, I'm not going to fire you or reprimand you because you don't want to do it. That's totally fine. And he was like, well, I know. I would have came in here with my union rep if I had to. Dude, she didn't even think about mentioning that she was totally okay, but he came in here because, see what it is, he didn't want to be carried away. He didn't want to lose his perfect record. He didn't want to stop getting accommodations and all this other stuff. He's looking at his stats more so than actually being someone that actually saves people. You're a paramedic. You're a first responder. That is your job, to save people. And I don't know, man. It made me upset with that dude. It really did. It just upsets me all kinds of way with that dude. And that's the case. Oh, the very first case. I forgot to talk about the very first case. I constantly say this week in and week out, man. Dude, props up to Grace, man. Grace is on another level with these 911 calls, man. She comes in contact with these conjoined twins, and they're conjoined, and the other dude is choking on peanut butter, and dude drags his body over there to the vacuum cleaner. She was like, well, paramedics are still 3 minutes out, so you got to find a way to save your brother. So she tells them to drag over to the vacuum cleaner, hook it up, and suck out the peanut butter, and we see the whole thing transpire. Dude, Grace is on another level, man. Grace is legit. Don't get me wrong. I love me some Maddie, and Maddie being a nurse, so she knows a lot of stuff, so she can help on the 911 calls. But Grace shines when she's up on these 911 calls. I'm just putting out straight facts, man. I think that's pretty much it for this episode, but I will say that I'm super excited for episode 7 because that preview looked legit, man. This is your buddy Incredible. Don't forget to smash the like button too. You can't smash any more. Comment down below, and I'll be sure to respond to each and every one of them and subscribe, but only if you really want to, man. Peace out.